following month from which you made the sale. There are certain instances that you may have counterparties that you're dealing with when you issue them invoice, depending on how your business is structured. They deduct withholding tax, right? And also depending on the nature of the service or the nature of the transaction, the withholding tax may differ from 5% to 10%, depending on the nature of the transaction, right? Under that circumstance, when withholding tax or when you deal with such counterparties, you are expected, or no, the relevant counterparty is expected to deduct withholding tax at the relevant rates and make the payments to your, on your behalf to the relevant tax authority. What you need to do from time to time is to follow up with the relevant counterparty to ensure that the relevant withholding taxes are paid on your behalf, because that withholding tax payment on your behalf serves as a credit which you can use to defray your tax liability at the end of each year. So that is from a personal income tax perspective. If you're talking about company income tax is the income tax paid by companies on their income, right? After they obviously must have prepared their audited financial statements. There are certain add-backs that are done on the basis of what the law says, tax laws, in terms of what is allowable as deductions from the tax perspective.
Okay.
After that, you arrive at your taxable profits, then you apply the tax percentage on it. If you're a small company, so as of today, today under the current regime, before we go to the new regime next year, there are three types of companies. You have the small company, those that have turnover below 25 million per annum. They are not paying any taxes. Those that have revenue between 25 to 100 million, they pay 20% company income tax. And the large companies, which is the third category, are those that have revenues above 100 million that pay company income tax at 30%. Now, what we're going to have in the new regime is that we wouldn't have a medium company as it were anymore. What we will have is either a small company or a large company, right? And the basis for determining whether you're a small company or a large company there are two indices or two factors, right? There is turnover, and there's also net assets, right? Or no, total assets, not net assets. Turnover must be less than 50 million, and your total assets must be less than 250 million for you to be able to qualify as a small company. And the interesting thing with that categorization is not one or the other. So it has to be, those conditions are coterminous. So you must meet those two conditions before you can be regarded as a small company. So what it means is that if you meet one condition and you do not meet the other, right, you may not be regarded as a small company. And now a small company is not supposed to pay company income tax. The income tax rate is at 0%. They are also not obligated to file VAT returns. If you notice my language, you are not obligated. So if you decide to file VAT returns, there's no harm there. But the thing there is that if you start, you can't stop. So you have to start.
So
if you decide to say you want to,
once you start, you must continue.
Exactly.
So what happens if you start and then stop?
Now, the systems of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, or the NRS as they will be soon called, right, is automated. So if you and they use a platform called Tax Promo. So if you decide to start filing, right, and you stop, what happens is that the system or the platform automatically computes interest and penalty for late returns payment. Late returns filing rather. Even if, let's assume that your VAT is nil, right, you will still have a penalty for not filing. So the advice is that if you are not obligated to file, right, it's better not to file until there is a legal obligation for you to file. Because if you start filing, essentially you can't stop, because the system is automated and will keep accumulating and compounding the penalties and interest.
That sounds like a very scary thing to have to contend with. Just because, oh, I said, let me just decide to file, and then boom, penalties for stopping.
Mhm.
This is why you need to know exactly what you should do and what you should not do. All right, let's take another break here. When we come back in, a couple of more questions actually coming in, and other things that we need to get into. Let's try to compress this as much as we can, because, like I said, so many people want clarification on so many different things. We'll try to do as much as we can. Stay with us on the other side of Lagos Talks. We'll be back with the conversation.
Music, stay tuned right here, the home of new contemporary music.
I have to restart the phone.
Okay, so and it's up now.
Yeah.
On Smooth 98.1.
It's just
Maybe there was a glitch.
probably.
Mm.
I wish I had known that glitch before we started, because I've had to stop the stream, start and stop again, then restart the phone.
I think there's something we need to talk about, which is there's another thing, or it's something that I saw that has generated controversy. When people will say, "Oh, can this is my account?" Right? Can this is my account? Can they seize my property? In fact, last week there was some type of argument because Taiwo Dele was saying, "Oh no, you do not, or the revenue authorities do not have authority to sell your property without a court order." Right? There was a news item that says, "Oh no, what he said was a lie." Right? That they have authority to seize your assets, which is true. They have authority to seize your asset, but what I would say is that we do not have authority to sell.
That's the sound.
Right?
Of
So there's a
December,
difference
the
between
laughter,
seizing the
the
asset
music,
selling
and
the
the
selling.
energy that
So you
connects
can
us
seize,
all.
but you cannot sell. But the question
Wherever
again
you
is,
tune in from, we're on the same frequency,
will
powered by First Bank.
bank balances,
Download the First
which I
mobile or
think
lit
is
app
going
today
to be a
and
source
stay
of
tuned
controversy,
to Dirty December's
is
vibe.
bank balance an asset? I don't believe it's an asset. I believe it's a debt which the bank owes to you.
Funky Fly.
Inflation all around.
Yeah.
All right, welcome back into the show, Lagos Talks on a Monday morning here on Smooth 98.1. Love music, love life. 48 minutes past 9 a.m. on the 29th of December 2025. Ayokunmi here. My guest still with me in the studio, Oyeyemi Oke. He's talking about tax matters. Yes, we're taking a look at the upcoming tax acts that will kick into gear on the 1st of January, trying to demystify and understand better what we need to know, what our responsibilities are, and basically just have the right information, really and truly. Keep your thoughts coming in on WhatsApp on 0911 999 0911 You can join the live stream as well on YouTube at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Apologies for the audio issues. The device had a sort of a glitch. I had to restart that, annoyingly so. But hey, technology sometimes gets in the way of progress, ironically. Anyways, well, welcome back into the conversation. So before we came back on, we were talking about something off the air. I'll come back to your questions, definitely. We were talking about some of the discrepancies and the confusion concerning whether or not individuals can have their accounts seized, over whether properties seized can be sold, and so on. We need a bit of clarity in that, to let people understand and know.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, there's a bit of controversy with regards to what the position of the new laws say in terms of seizure of properties and sale of properties. And in recent times, it's been a source of argument. Now, to clarify, there are two things or there are two issues rolled up into one. Now, under the Act, and I'll say the Act here would be Nigerian Tax Administration Act. Now, I think specifically Section 65 and the third schedule. Now, there's what we call the power of distrain, right? And the power of distrain essentially is the power to seize an asset, right? Um, I have had various persons or several persons call me and say, "Oh, can they take my assets? Can they take my bank account or take monies from my bank account and things like that? Now, under the Act, there is a power of distraint, which means the revenue authority, right, can actually, by way of a warrant of distraint, right, seize an asset,
Okay.
right? An asset could be personal property, chattels, and what have you, right? But they are under an obligation, I think 14 days obligation, right? No, so when the taxpayer does not make payment of the relevant tax, which is he or she is being accused, or it, depending if it's a company, being accused of of owing, right, within 14 days after the seizure, then the revenue authorities can actually go to the court for a court order, right, for the relevant asset to be disposed of. Now, that is an asset, right, which can be something tangible, right? Now, the question is money an asset? Of course, money is an asset, right? Now, going further, and I think I'll be a bit technical here, is a bank balance an asset, right? Looking at what the laws say, and I must say that even before the new acts that we have, these provisions have always been there, right? The power to distrain and our power to sell, right? They've always been there. There's a dichotomy. Distrain is seizure, power to sell, obviously, is to sell subject to a court order. Now, the issue of bank balances, the law as currently drafted does not state that you can distrain bank balances. Now, some may argue, again, it's a question of what the legal practitioners want to argue, right? Perhaps maybe if you're working for the revenue authority, you want to argue that a bank balance, right, will form part of your chattel, right, which is actually stated in the law, for which you can distrain. But my view is that a bank balance is not a chattel, right? It's not a chattel because a bank balance in the real self, it's a debt that is owed to you, right? So, for example, you have money with whatever bank, ABC Bank, right? That money that is sitting in your bank balance is a debt that is owed, which you can call on at any point in time. The law does not say whether the old or the new order, right, does not say that a bank balance, right, is a chattel. Explicitly, it doesn't say that. Again, like I said, some may want to argue to say a bank balance is subsumed under the definition of the chattel, but I think there's actually a clear distinction because the bank balance, as far as I'm concerned, is a debt that is being owed to you. But I mean, to clarify what you mentioned, there is a difference between the power to seize or the power to exercise seizure, right, of property, and the subsequent power to sell, right? The revenue authorities can seize expressly. It's expressly stated under Section 65 and also the third schedule of the Nigerian Tax Administration Act. Okay. However, they cannot sell except they get a court order.
The court order is completely sacrosanct before that can actually be done.
Correct.
All right. Let's take this very final pause for this morning and come back in. We'll address those questions. I know that King Kenny has sent another question in. King Kenny, don't worry. I'll get Oyeyemi to answer the question and a couple of more of those. I think that's what we'll do on the other side. Let's get those questions answered so you can get more clarity. Stay with us here on Lagos Talks on Smooth 98.1. We'll be back in a moment. This conversation, it's not a one day affair.
At all. I always have, in fact, there was a day I did a 3-hour training, right, for a kind of class. And after we finished, he said, no, we have to do this one full week. I said, I agree. Because when we did the 3 hours, 3 hours seems to be a lot, right? But by the time all the issues came up, we found out that it wasn't. So we did it for a whole full week. Because what I told them, what you guys want me to come and talk about, you want me to come and talk about laws that combined there are about 1,000 sections. You want me to come and talk about it in 3 hours. In fact, there was time during the 1 week training that they asked a question. I would say, I don't know. Let's look at the law again.
For more details, call
Oh, Lord have mercy.
901 or 7000
I can't
or visit
recall off the top of my head any act or reform like this that has had so much confusion over it.
Well, so the petroleum industry has also had a bit of confusion.
Folake, this your new office
Right.
space looks really nice.
In
So just take a look at this furniture.
2021 when it
Thank
came,
you. Anyway,
right.
that's not why I came up. Your thoughts
But
as well.
it's not
Was
as
fantastic.
so that one maybe because it was
Folake,
sector
who give you
specific.
this?
If you were not affected, you wouldn't
Yeah,
know.
I think that's why it wasn't really like a big deal.
Exactly, and maybe the taxpayers there were sophisticated,
me the benefits
right? I mean,
savings and
they are usually the highest taxpayers in Nigeria. But it's not like maybe what differentiates this one affects everybody, even the gate man on the road.
So that's why everybody's like, come, I beg you, what's going on exactly?
weekday mornings on Smooth 98.1.
All right, it's looking like we might take a little bit of extra time this morning on the show Lagos Talks because we need to answer all your queries as much as we can. Ayokunmi here, Oyeyemi Oke with me in the studio. We are looking at tax reforms. Yes, the Tax Act is kicking into gear on Thursday, January 1st, 2026. We're trying to answer all the questions that you might have, all the queries, all the confusion. We want to lay them to rest this morning. That's what we're trying to do in the time that we have that is assigned to us. Let me go right back into the questions. King Kenny, who is in Moe, says, please, what type of taxes are paid by a business name owner / enterprise? And I don't know why Nigerians are either lethargic or allergic to payment of taxes. Most advanced and developed countries don't joke with payment of taxes to prosper. Nigeria shouldn't be an exception. Change is sacrosanct.
Okay. So what type of taxes do business names or enterprises pay? So because the business name is not an incorporated entity, what happens is that the promoter of the business name will pay personal income tax, right? But before you pay the personal income tax, you have to prepare your account. You have to be able to know what revenue is what are your total revenues, what expenses are attributable to your business, so that you can take it out before you now before you get to what we call the taxable income. Once you get to the taxable income, then you subject that income to what we call the graduated tax table, right, at various rates, and then that would lead to the personal income tax that is payable. So that's one. Also, if you are a business name and you have, for example, vendors that provide you services or make supplies to you, you have an obligation to deduct withholding tax, right? From the receipt, from the payment that you want to make to the relevant vendor, and you remit the withholding tax to the relevant tax authority. The relevant tax authority will be dependent on who the counterparty is. If the counterparty is a business name just like you, right, then you'll be remitting withholding tax to the state internal revenue service where the business name that is the counterparty is domiciled. If it's a company, then you remit to the FIRS, right? You need to get the tax identification number of the relevant counterparty so that you can remit the withholding tax. Now, as mentioned before, you're supposed to charge VAT on your invoices, right? So the VAT that you charge on your invoices is not a payment of tax by you per se, is a payment of tax by the persons who are enjoying maybe the services or the products which you have supplied. So once you get the VAT, you're supposed to make the relevant remittances. So those are the taxes that are immediately relevant to a business name. Now, with regards to your comment on why are Nigerians lethargic to payment of taxes, I think the short answer is that there is a perception, and I don't think it's a perception. To me, I think it's a reality with regards to use of funds of taxpayers' monies, right? Taxpayers as of today are lethargic because they are worried as to whether the taxes that are paid, right, are being judiciously used. And that's why perhaps, or where the lethargy comes in. If you compare it to some of the crimes which you have mentioned, right, you will see that there's a judicious use of taxpayers' money. So
Exactly.
that's a concern. And I think perhaps maybe if I think it's more of an issue of accountability. We need to hold our leaders accountable, right? More. I think if we hold them accountable more, then they would know that it's not business as usual with regards to them collecting taxes and not making use of the monies that have been collected.
That is very important. That's something that's always been said. Oh, if you pay taxes, what am I benefiting from payment of these taxes, and so on and so forth. And looking at where we are right now, where it's going to be even more stringent, the questions that are going to be asked of the government will become triple, if not quadrupled. That okay, we are in this regime now, tax-wise. What am I going to enjoy?
Mhm.
That is the thing. Amadi from IBA says, good morning, Smooth. Good morning to you. Please, is there a way this new tax act will affect withdrawals from individual bank accounts when it goes into effect on January 1st? Are there any obligations required on the part of customers to their respective banks ahead of all this? And what of the unemployed?
Mm. Okay. So, to answer the question point blank, nothing affects your bank account, right? And these are some of the perhaps misinformation which has been peddled, right, with regards to the new fiscal regime. Nothing affects your bank account, right? Nobody's going to go after your bank account. You should bear in mind that before your bank accounts can be distrained, right? What typically happens, and I've seen this happen in real life, if I mean, before your bank account can be distrained, there's a whole long process. They would have tried to contact you to say you've not paid your taxes, come and pay. It's not something that the bank, the revenue authorities, whether at the federal or state level, will just wake up and say, "Oh, you are owing taxes, then we seize your bank account." No. So I don't think there should be a cause for worry at all to persons or to individuals with regards to their bank account. Now, the other point with regards to what happens to unemployed persons, right? Taxes are paid on income, right? So if you do not have income as an unemployed person, then you are not expected to pay tax. And do not forget that even if you have income, the income must be at a particular threshold, right, before you pay taxes.
Okay.
Based on what we have said today, if you are earning minimum wage and below, you are still not even expected to pay taxes. If you earn less than 800,000 naira per annum, you're still not expected to pay taxes. So, one thing we should bear in mind on one of the mantra is that taxes only follow income, and so when there's no income, there's no tax to be paid.
Right. And talking about income, something interesting I've been seeing on different WhatsApp platforms and status updates. This issue of when you make transfers, you should use the remark section to indicate where you're transferring the money for and all that. I mean, because we tend to send monies for different things at different points, how do we insulate ourselves from not getting to that position where, oh, there's a look at the inflow outflow and then, oh, it falls within this threshold, oh, you should pay X. But the monies were not for me, they were for this and that. How do we insulate ourselves against that?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I see in terms of information around is to ensure that there's proper description of transactions, right? Which
Right.
I agree. I'm even surprised that people are still just, I just getting to do this. I've been doing this for God knows where, for whatever transfer I make, no matter how little, right? I always put a description, and for me, it's also what I call self accountability, so that you also know what you're spending monies on. But from a tax perspective, it's advisable for you to put descriptions with regards to your transaction. But one thing I should let us know also is that the revenue authorities or the persons working at the revenue authorities are also what's it called? They are humans and Nigerians like us. What we should bear in mind is that if they want to take a position, right, in terms of what your income is, they would, I mean, except maybe there's a situation whereby you have not provided sufficient information, right? But before they take a position, they look at all your circumstance. I hear people say, "Oh, does this mean that they have access to my bank accounts and things like that?" Right? Sorry to bust your bubble, but they've had this type of access even for a long time before now, right?
So it's not new.
It's not new, right? It's only if perhaps I would say you are a person of interest in terms of they feel that maybe the taxes which you are paying or which you have declared is not sufficient, right? I think the first thing they try to do is even ask you directly to say, give us your bank statement, right? But we've seen instances whereby they bring up the bank statement to say, based on our intelligence report, right, we know you have bank accounts in XYZ Bank, XYZ Bank, ABC Bank, DEF Bank, and all that. And on basis of this, we are able to aggregate your income and say this is your total income. So, yes, putting descriptions to your bank transactions would help, right? But again, um, some of the information which we think, and I think is also coming from a point of we underestimating the revenue authorities, right, with regards to how much information they can access, right? I can tell you for free that if any revenue authority in this country wants your bank account,
They will
right,
get it.
they would get it easily.
Huh. Okay. I'm hearing some things I did not know before. Well, this is why we have those who know in the studio to let us know exactly. Okay, let me try to squeeze these questions in. Like I said, it's back to back to back. Let me take this one from Ayoride Ayo from Amo. He says, please, how are landlord taxes calculated and what is the tax ratio? Landlord taxes.
Landlord taxes.
Or do you mean taxes that landlords pay? Is that what you mean? Ayo.
So I'll answer it from two perspectives because I'm trying to struggle to understand the question. But I think, well, if I answer it from two perspectives, I'm sure I would have, he would have, or his questions would have been answered one way or the other.
Right, right.
So, if his landlord taxes based on what he has said, right? Um, so typically, what happens is that if you are supposed to pay rent, for example, to your landlord, right, there's an obligation for you to deduct withholding tax, right, and remit the withholding tax on behalf of your landlord. But again, I would answer it from a practical perspective. Most landlords will say, "Don't touch my money," right, for whatever reason, right. I think again, it's a question of understanding, right. What I typically advise is try as much as possible to let the landlord know that I'm going to deduct this money, but I'm not taking it and putting it in my pocket because it's also a question of trust, right? Give me your tax ID. Let me go and remit this withholding tax so that the revenue authorities do not come after me, right? Especially if it's a corporate, right? So if, for example, I'm a company, I'm paying rent to my landlord, I want to deduct withholding tax so that maybe the revenue authorities do not come and say, "Oh, you are supposed to deduct withholding tax, you're going to pay withholding tax on that." So that's one way to answer this question. Another way, and I'm trying to just make sense of the question, is that if you look at, I mean, when you say landlord tax, maybe the monies that accrue into the hands of the landlord, right, from revenues from collecting rent, right? It's expected that everyone is to file their annual tax returns no later than the 31st of March of every year. Right?
Okay.
So what happens is that your rental income should be declared, part of the income that you should declare to government, and you pay taxes on it, right? And when you pay taxes on it, the withholding tax that may have been deducted at source will serve as a credit, right? So let's assume that withholding tax of 10 naira was deducted. By the time they calculated um, the the tax on the rent that you have collected, let's assume it's 200 naira. You already paid 10,000, I mean 10 naira from your advance payment, which is the withholding tax, So what you'll be paying is 190 naira, right? So do that. I mean, making sense of the question, I think that's how I would answer it.
Okay. Final question here. Fingers crossed because we really need to wrap it up.
Okay.
Wilson says, please, Wilson says, under the new tax act, is salary considered an income as regards personal income tax? Am I supposed to pay tax on my salary? I understand that income in tax matters is deemed as gain.
So you're supposed to pay. So you're supposed to pay taxes on your salaries, right? Um, do not forget that the tax on your salaries, there is an obligation on your employer to deduct. So you're not going to be paying any other tax by the time you collect your salary because the employer is supposed to deduct and make remittance of the taxes that have been deducted through the revenue authority.
Mm.
So your salary that you have collected is net of taxes, which you're supposed to put in your pocket without paying for the taxes.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that answers the question, right? So you don't pay additional taxes on your net salary.
Okay. Austin from Satellite says, good morning. Your guest said that we should hold our leaders and government responsible. How? If you protest for not getting what you're supposed to get from them, they will send the police or thugs after you. Do our leaders care? The masses provide everything they need by themselves.
Well, that's absolutely correct, but I think it's what I call baby steps, right? How do you hold them accountable, right? During the electioneering, when they are campaigning to you, you ask them, "You've collected X, Y, Z from us, right? What did you use it for?" You know, one of the things again is that politicians, sometimes we say that votes don't matter,
Mm.
right? Or our votes don't matter. But they go out to buy the votes. If the votes don't matter, why are they buying it? That's one. Then two is that if a politician knows that, oh, at the end of the 4-year term, right, somebody would ask me, how did you spend the money? It may not necessarily yield immediate results, but gradually it's changing the orientation and changing the psyche, right? To say that for whatever monies you collect or for whatever naira you collect from us, we're going to ask you questions as to how you spent it. Again, this you do not or we should not expect changes overnight. It's going to be gradual, right? But if we are not even asking, I think the problem, in my view, that I have is that we're not even asking them at all to say, you've collected XYZ in revenues. How have you spent it? And the interesting thing is, governments either at the federal or state level will say, "Oh, we've hit our revenue targets, right? We've surpassed our revenue targets. We've done this." But people are not asking questions, right? The best, I mean, maybe the questions you get is questions at the National Assembly, right? When they are presenting budgets or their oversight functions, and that's when questions are asked. And again, the question, I mean, the issue there is that it's arguable that members of the National Assembly are not the common men like you and I,
Mm.
right? So questions need to be asked at each fora, and you do not. I mean, is the progress is not immediate. It's going to be gradual. So I think the challenge for me is not even asking questions at all.
All right. I mean, that's where you need to start from. And don't let them feel comfortable when you say, hey, we do these things, but nobody actually bothers to find out anything. So I think we're good to go. Anyways, we really need to go at this point in time. We've taken extra time right now. There's so much to talk about on this particular issue, but hey, I don't think a week is even enough to dissect the entire thing. But I hope we've been able to answer a couple of questions and just, should I say, give some clarity to some of the major issues that are bugging you concerning the upcoming Tax Reform Acts coming up on the 1st of January 2026. Thank you so much, Oyeyemi Oke, for joining me this morning. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hayo.
All right. Hope you have a great Monday and a great rest of the week as well. Lagos, it's been quite an interesting morning. Thank you for being a part of an extended Lagos Talk this morning. Hey, needs must, as they say. My name is Ayokunmi Kekere. Keep it tuned. It's great music all the way till 11. This is Smooth 98.1.
Thank you.
Let's turn the stream off.
Okay.